Hello, we are here in Taipei talking to some amazing people who are working on human rights in the digital space, and they've all converged here to share ideas about how to protect citizens from the increasing threats posed by AI, spyware, and other insidious forms of digital activity. With us now is Kuan-Ju Chou from the Taiwan Association for Human Rights. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for Nell and Brad having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We're so excited to have you on the
Yeah.
on the podcast.
And what we really want to know is what's it like being a digital activist in Taiwan at the present moment?
Um, I think in Taiwan that people who do activist work in digital rights field, there are so different kinds of issues, and there are people from misinformation and disinformation, and also from sexual rights. But what I'm working in Taiwan Association for Human Rights, that we mostly focus on privacy issues. That because that TAR is founded before the martial law was suspended in Taiwan, so that we value privacy many more, because we think that it relates to democracy. If a country wants to make it longer and participant in democracy, that we must be very careful and make accountable for all the procedure and technicals that both public and private sectors would use on maybe surveillance, or maybe just linking different data from different sources to know one people's lifestyle.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you a question? And we're on a podcast, so I guess I will be asking you questions.
That will happen.
But just to pick you up on this idea about privacy and democracy, because a lot of people, I think, don't quite get that a central tenet of a healthy democracy is the privacy protections of its citizens. Like how private is a citizen, how they're able to protect themselves from arbitrary interference or arbitrary invasions of their privacy is an essential indicator of how healthy a democracy is. Talk to us a little bit about that, because it's so interesting that you've come through this like dictatorship for what is it?
Well, you had the longest martial law
Yeah.
in the world, 37 years
Yes.
under that kind of oppression and surveillance. You were also saying that in 1984 is a big year for you, because that was the year that you were still under, as a country, under that martial law.
Yeah.
Uh, because TAR founded in 1984, and why that TAR founded in that year is that the first purpose for TAR is to rescue political criminals.
Right.
And now that Taiwan, there is not much of this kind of issues nowadays, but still we have other human rights issues that I think is not the mainly population in Taiwan will support, but there are also people who cares there are some fundamental rights that should be monitored and should be improved. And when speaking about privacy in Taiwan, that many people think is about confidentiality.
Yeah.
But what in TAR we think that is more about people's self-control and self-agency.
Yeah.
So if there is some data that people are willing to share with government or share with research for public use, is very fine. But people have the right to exercise their data protection rights and know where and how these data are being used. But because, for example, like when we look back in the history in the authoritarian age, and back in Taiwan, there are some surveillance documents that is being reviewed. That at that time, that the government didn't use digital techniques. They are just
That's what I was
many
going to
people.
say. Yeah.
It was pre-digital.
But the
Lots
the
of paper.
documents is very
Detailed?
detailed.
Yeah.
But we know that there are some people they are in the document and they
Yeah.
say that is not true, because when you have the human webs or other webs to surveillance people that the actors that have this power, they can comment on these people. For
Yeah.
example, like they see some signs of these people's location or their friends, they can comment these people for to make their reputation down,
Yeah.
saying something like
Yeah.
that. So I think it's not
It's-
about fact; it's about the power.
It's about the power. And I was going to ask, what's it like having such a powerful neighbor in China just across the strait, the Taiwan Strait?
Yeah, and I just read some news and um, in
Don't
Tar,
do that. It's
yeah,
not a good idea anymore.
What
We've been
news?
saying it's better not to read the news.
but in
We
Tar
can't
that
help it.
our
Yeah.
staff cannot go to we cannot go to PRC because we know that um, we are
Well, you're a
we
human
are
rights
dangerous.
institution.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
um, just reflecting on this concept of like what it's like to be part of like to live in like an authoritarian state in a kind of pre-digital era, and then now to have an organization that was formed in that space, and now to move it into the digital era, and at the sort of the manifestation of that is data. Like before, it was like maybe information in a spreadsheet or whatever on a piece of paper, and now it's protection of data. And so what does data protection mean in Taiwan? Like what is it? How do you define it and how do you protect it?
Um, I I think that when speaking about data protections or some data privacy issues in Taiwan, there are some people will confusing the concept of security to data protection. They will say that if there is no leaks or they meet some ISO criteria, so there's no need to talk about data protection. But I think data protection is more about how the data controller design, how to respect data subjects, right? How to exercise and how to manage the risk. And in this year, it is a 2025 is a very important year for Taiwan. Is because in this year's August, the Taiwanese government must establish an independent data protection authority
Yeah.
in Taiwan. And why there is
That was mentioned last night
Yeah.
in the
yeah
Yes.
why
In the
why
opening ceremony.
Yeah.
why there is a deadline here is because back in 2022 in Taiwan, there is a constitutional judgment that asked the government must establish and an independent supervisory mechanism for data protection and also other legislation that must be protect health data in Taiwan is something about that back in like 10 years in Taiwan that we have national health insurance data, but different political parties in Taiwan when they become ruling party, they think that this data should be used for
belongs
public
to them.
for for for
No.
public for
Yeah.
public interest. So there are many years ago it is used in industries, but after the litigation that TAR files, it is only in research for secondary use for research. But we want
Interesting.
the consent right back. But
Yeah.
because for now it's only the the judge only say there at least must be opt out right.
Now, you and I have talked about data protection. We've done
Yeah.
we've
A
done
lot.
70 episodes of This Week in Cyberspace, and so many of those episodes come back down to data. Like how is your data secured? How is your data protected? How do you have consent about the data that's being used, have been collected, sold, resold? How do you withdraw? So are these the sorts of things that you're going to see in this data protection with the data protection supervisor? Like, is it based on the GDPR?
And it's based on Taiwanese.
TDPR.
I'm not sure Personal Data Protection Act.
Okay.
But there should be other act that to authorize the secondary use of sensitive data.
Interestingly, last night at the opening ceremony, we had your vice president speaking
Yes.
and also the vice premier of Taipei. Both women were talking about wanting to be a beacon for democracy in Southeast Asia with so many different tensions in the region, because Taiwan had its first democratic election in 1996. So it's really quite a fresh democracy, really. And I'm just wondering how digital rights has come to the forefront, because also Taiwan is a huge producer of advanced computer chips. Like 90% of the world's advanced computer chips are produced here in Taiwan. And there's that tension with the US as well, with Trump wanting to take back that market. How are workers and digital rights activists resisting that?
Good question, Nellie.
Well, I'm sort of fascinated because,
I'm not so sure how to, um, because I think when speaking about digital rights, and that there are so many different aspects
Yeah.
and issues that sometimes even in a group, there are different people caring about digital rights.
Yes.
But sometimes there are still some tension inside. And what I would like to, so I think because I'm not familiar with semiconductor industry, but I think there is an issue in Taiwan back in 2020 is about the EID, the new EID scheme, and at that time I think
Electronic identification.
yes that the Chinese government want to release a mandatory one.
Yeah.
And I think at that time is the most people in Taiwan from different background and also the city
Oh,
of
interesting.
Hsinchu.
Said no.
Is it?
People said no. People were responding to
Yes.
that to say, because one of the things that is so concerning, sort of contemporary digital policy is this idea about, like, how does your biometrics become your identifier, and your electronic identification kind of trap you, and not only you but your family and your unborn grandkids and so on. And I think it's particularly if you've come from living in an authoritarian state, like, the last thing that you want is, like, for the state to control all of that information. So I imagine was that the sort of impetus that people came onto the streets, or
But
or
people
just
didn't
propose
come in the
yeah,
streets.
okay, yeah.
But I think it is interesting that at that time the government wants to put some tests on 3 local governments, and one of the government in Hsinchu city in Taiwan. And this city is in most people in Taiwan will think that Hsinchu city is there lives many people from tech backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
and and they say no to the mandatory EID. But back then, as I know, that many people cares not because of privacy, is because of national security at that time.
Okay.
So, interestingly, again, those two leaders last night, it must be quite powerful actually having that
Did you see it?
support at the opening ceremony with
Yes.
the vice president and the vice premier. That they're standing up for digital rights. They were saying that the old slogan used to be "fight fire with wire," but now it's like "fight fire with wireless."
Yeah.
I think I think the two they speak some issues in privacy also and data protection, but they are some big issues that many people in Taiwan focus is on cable, the security of the undersea
network,
cables, because there has some relationship to PRC.
Yeah.
And also cares about security. But I personally think that security issues should be considered together with privacy issues to make
Absolutely.
it can see the whole woods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
the forest for the trees. Yeah, that's go on now. I think we're
So-
probably at our last question. I
Well,
can't believe it's almost...
It's interesting. This is the first time in a decade that RightsCon has been held in Southeast Asia. And I'm wondering how empowering it is for you as a digital rights activist to have the support of not only the government, as we saw last night, but of all these activists from all over the world converging here in Taipei.
Um, I think in these 2 weeks we are really, really busy because many people came into Taipei, and we can discuss with them if we all have similar, I think similar problems and similar struggles that we want to tackle in different issues through digital rights. And I personally are really looking forward that our government and And also, legislators will see these opportunities to have more pictures about how digital rights will have to build and have some roots in Taiwan.
I think that's the aim, like for RightsCon to kind of not just come here as like the big circus into town, but just sort of leave and empower the local activists and advocates in Taipei, in Taiwan, in East Asia, like in the region. And we wish you all the best for August.
Yes, we'll be watching closely.
And,
I have anticipation to both to both both the executive yuan and parliaments. I hope they will come out as strong enough data protection act and also the authority.
And congratulations to your organization for being the one that won the court case that's made this happen. I think this is, I mean, many organizations struggle for years and years without a victory. So congratulations on that. And we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.